Thank you very much. I'm only intervening to pass the floor to the second group, to Denis and Dmitro, and to invite the audience, especially the audience that is with us online, but also here in Lviv, to contribute to the discussion either orally here or by means of the chat box. Thank you.
Good morning, dear audience. My name is Dmitro Demid, and here's my colleague Denis Boyechko. We are EP students from Ukrainian Catholic University, and we want to present you our group's case study and policy proposal on issue of refugees in Ukraine. First, let me picture you a present situation. Ukraine has a constant flow of refugees who cross our borders in search of asylum. Due to 2020 UN statistics, we have around 5,000 external refugees and asylum seekers in our country. Ukraine for sure is not the best destination for asylum seekers due to different social and economical problems of our own. Our state cannot really provide people who need with medical and social care. But still we have that constant flow. And the reason of that is that Ukraine is a transit zone between European Union and the Middle East, Central Asia and Caucasus regions. Therefore, the highest number of refugees in Ukraine are from Afghanistan, from Iraq, Iran, Azerbaijan and Armenia. Our focus today is going to be on those external refugees from strange societies, but also we can't not mention here 1.5 million internally displaced persons from Crimea and Donbas regions that we have since 2014 in Ukraine who are running from Russian forces in those regions. Still, a lot of those external refugees decide to stay here in Ukraine. They want to integrate into society. And here in Lviv, we examined a case of a center of GRS, which is a Jesuit refugee service. It is an international Catholic organization founded by Jesuit order. The center here in Lviv can accept up to 24 people. It is a small two-floor house. And the capacity of this center is very limited comparing to the scope of the problem in Ukraine. So it has to focus on some social groups, and the focus is on families, especially with kids and most vulnerable categories of refugees like the old or those who need medical care. The aim of the center is not to give those people a constant place to live here. It is mostly to give them a temporary shelter and to help them to integrate into society. This center gives them asylum, gives them medical aid, educational assistance, which is mostly language courses of the local Ukrainian language or the language of the country where those refugees are heading. Also, they provide them with some material and financial assistance, pastoral and psychological and social support. It is very important for those people because most of them are running from war or from another kinds of violence, and usually they're extremely stressed and have a lot of psychological problems. They don't believe each other. They don't trust those people. Also, the crucial is legal protection and legal support, because part of those people, they have crossed Ukrainian border illegally, and a lot of them don't have the most of papers that they need to live in Ukraine, and it is almost impossible for them to pass all the bureaucratic cabinets here in Ukraine without knowing language, local rules, and that's very difficult, and GRS lawyers help them to cope with those problems. And the last vector of their work is reunification of families. Sometimes it happens that part of family was successful enough to get to their destination country, mostly it's European Union, but part of the family was stopped somewhere on the maybe Ukrainian-Polish border or other borders. And then GRS lawyers they start the legal procedure of reunification of families, and that's what they do. Denise, please.
Thank you, Dmitro. Now that you know about the GRS organization and its work in Lviv, you need to know about the integration problem in Ukraine, the main solutions and obstacles that refugees face coming to our country. But nevertheless, except for the GRS work, the problem is not local, it's national. So our main goal is deep integration of the refugees in Ukrainian society. We assume that one of the most effective ways to achieve this goal is employment. According to the United Nations Refugee Office information, in 2019 there were 2,620 refugees in Ukraine needing additional official status. Most of them were from Afghanistan. Another problem is the long bureaucracy process of getting the official documents. Most common issue is that they don't get the documents get lost, or the process take too long and there is not enough time to get integrated in the local societies. Refugees often live in Ukraine for less than 3 years and they do not study the state language, so they cannot obtain the citizenship. Furthermore, UN Refugee Office evaluates that the actual need of financial resources for refugees and asylum seekers is funded only for 5%, and obviously that's not enough. Those problems result in the absence of cultural dialogue, which unfortunately leads to xenophobia. So that's why we have some policy suggestions which could help them and make the process easier and better for the refugees. First of all, the process of obtaining refugee status needs to be simplified. That's because, as I said, they have not enough time to get integrated, and integration is one of the most top priorities to get them into our society. Then, or better said, when we simplify the procedure and we make the bureaucracy easier for them, we need to optimize the employment process for persons with the status of asylum seekers. Because when they get the job, they get hired, they get integrated. To do that, we need to launch educational campaigns for the Ukrainian entrepreneurs so that they would know how to work with the refugees and how to handle them. And to make this dialogue possible, we need to offer and start governmental language courses so that the refugees coming to Ukraine, they would have the choice and the ability to learn Ukrainian language and to stay here and to call Ukraine their home, their new home. And through that, after language courses, after getting hired and simplifying the legal procedure, we could establish the cultural dialogue so that we can make the deep integration of refugees in our society possible. Thank you for your attention. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And we are now turning to a set of issues that gained an immense relevance and attention both in foreign policy and since recently in Catholic social thought and social ethics in general since recently. And those are the issues of climate change and environmental protection. And our next speakers are going to shed a light on what's going on in Ukraine in that regard, and what does Ukrainian experience have to say on those issues. But already this student panel is extremely illustrative of the whole nature of this conference, because the next speakers are not here with us. They're going to present online. And so I'm wondering whether Sophia and Marta are you with us?
Yes, we are. Can you hear us?
Yeah, we can. Thank you. We can hear you. Can you share the screen?
Yes, of course. I will do it in just a second.
Please do. And the floor is yours.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We are really happy to be presenting today as well, even though we unfortunately could not be physically present in the walls of our university. We are still very happy to present. Our group has been working on the our group would like to change the situation. Our presentation could be divided into 4 main categories. At first, we will discuss the issues that are present. Then we will talk about the regulations that our government already makes. We will also cover the regulations that non-governmental organizations and activists make. And then we will also discuss the regulations that we wish to see implemented in the future. So I will start from the experience of Ukraine. The first thing that I would like to mention is that the environmental policy at the national level is formed by the Ministry of Ecology and Natural Resources. Currently, in the framework of public administration reform, it is planned to focus the ministry's efforts on analytical work, which will consist in the development of policy decisions in environmental protection. In Ukraine, we have a set of issues that are present for the entire world, as well as some very unique and very special problems for Ukraine. So the general problems are climate change, air pollution, problem with water resources, soil degradation and pollutions, problems that are related to subsoil exploitation, conservation of biodiversity, and many more. But also, we have some very unique issues that are, first of all, the problem of illegal mining of amber in Ukraine. The second one is the condition of the environment in Donbas area. And the third one is the environment of the exclusion zone.
So moving on to illegal amber mining, Ukraine is one of the European leaders in amber reserves, which are concentrated mostly in the Polisa region to the north and northwest of Ukraine. And the problem arose when the average price of amber became about $10,000 per kilogram. And in order for companies in Ukraine to dig out amber, they have to get a license. So there are around 6 companies that are supposed to extract amber, and they're supposed to extract about 4 tons of this mineral annually. However, the exact number, the estimates is about from 120 to 300 tons per year. So we can see that the black market is thriving. And very often amber is mined in the valuable natural areas like national forests and protected areas. And according to the State Forest Forestry Agency of Ukraine, 3,500 hectares of forest have already been damaged in this region because the black diggers, the black market diggers, they do not follow the extraction technology, which leads to the destruction of the groundwater drainage channels, microclimatic changes in these regions, and particular the destruction of the forests and all biodiversity leaves a severe impact on the redbook animals. Some species are endangered and might go extinct in a couple of years. And the advisor to the Minister of Internal Affairs, Mr. Shkirak, said that this is a social problem because people involved in it are Ember Mafia and some unemployed locals. On December 19, Verkhovna Rada passed a bill to regulate the amber mining, and the law today is in force already. It establishes a criminal liability for illegal mining and introduced to get it is through the Prozoro, which is electronic public procurement platform.
Thank you. And now moving on to the state of the environment of the Donbas region. So as most of you probably know, there has been a military conflict going on in the eastern part of Ukraine for the past 6.5 to 7 years. The hostilities have significantly increased the risk of accidents and industrial plants and infrastructure. The main danger is in the context of the conflict is related to the possibilities of environmental pollution due to accidents and serious disruptions at industrial and other enterprises of the region. Ukrainian ecologists currently do not have a complete picture of the ecological condition of the occupied territories of Luhansk and Donetsk regions. Representatives of the territories groups keep silent about the environmental problems that arise in the territories under their control. However, some of them cannot be hidden as they cause obvious damage to government-controlled areas. For example, there has been cases of looting of mines in the cities of Luhansk region. There are many such examples. Among the challenges of the future, we must remember not only the economic, political, or cultural issues, but we also definitely have to keep in mind the environmental issues that might be occurring in these territories.
Moving on to the exclusion zone, on April 26, 1986, the Chernobyl accident occurred, which went down in the history of Ukraine and the world as one of the worst tragedies of the 20th century. The accident was accompanied by the release of a large amount of radioactive substances into the environment. And after the accident, a 30-kilometer zone around the Chernobyl nuclear power plant was identified as an exclusion zone and a zone of unconditional resettlement. The ecological danger is not limited only to radioactive contamination, but also by the possibility of catastrophic phenomena such as forest fires, uncontrolled flooding, and the drainage of the radioactive materials through groundwater channels. On April 24, 2016, by the decree of the President of Ukraine, the Radiation Ecological Biosphere Reserve was created in the exclusion zone, and the purpose of it was to preserve the natural state of the most typical natural complexes of Polisia, provide support and increase the barrier function of the Chernobyl exclusion zone, stabilize the hydrological regime, rehabilitate the areas contaminated with the radionuclides, and promote the organization and conduct of international research.
Now we will move on to the policies that have already been implemented by the Ukrainian government. First of all, there is the main strategic document on climate change in Ukraine that is divided into three main categories. There is the concept of the implementation of the strategy, there is the action plan, and there is the law of Ukraine on the basic principle of the state environmental policy of Ukraine for the period of 2030. So the concept of implementation of the state policy in the field of climate change for the period until 2030 was approved by the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine on December 7th of 2016. This concept is the first comprehensive legal document of Ukraine in the field of climate change. Its goal is to improve public policy on climate change to achieve sustainable development of the country, create legal and institutional preconditions for a gradual transition to low carbon development with economic, energy, and environmental security, and to generally improve the welfare of citizens. In order to implement the Parisian Agreement and the set of actions aimed at the state policy in the field of climate change until 2030, there has been released a low-carbon development strategy. Ukraine became the 9th party to this Paris Agreement to adopt such a strategy. According to it, Ukraine will make efforts to achieve an indicator that by 2050 will be 31 to 34% of greenhouse gas emission compared to 1990. Apart from that, on the positive note, during 2017, so from 2017 to 2019, Ukraine rose significantly in the climate change performance index, entering the world's top 20 countries that make a significant contribution to the development of the international climate movement.
So let's look at the role of the public in the environmental movement of Ukraine. The work of the environmental organization environmental problems. Year by year, the number of supporters of environmental organizations is growing, and their contribution to solving global environmental problems is increasing. In Ukraine, we can identify the 3 most influential environmental organizations, which are National Ecological Center, Ecology Law Men, and Ukrainian Ecology League. The purpose of their activity is improving the environmental situation in Ukraine, ensuring the environmental rights of citizens, informing the principles of sustainable development. There are also a lot of examples of environmental organizations that are created and operate at the local and city levels. So in the Lviv region, where our university is located, there are some of them, such as NGO Zero Waste Lviv, public organization Green Box Lviv, NGO Center for Environmental Initiatives Eco Action Kyiv, and public organization EcoGold Kolomia Ivano-Frankivsk region.
And now moving on to the policies that our group wishes to see implemented in the nearest future. Again, we have divided the policies into 3 main categories, about the state level, the community level, and the city level. So I will start with the state level. Something that we suggest is allocation of funding for environmental green organizations, also creating benefits for companies that meet European requirements, establishing the state inspectorate for environmental compliance,
Also, our cities definitely need to adapt to the climate change, and we suggest increasing the number of green areas, so planting plants on high-rise buildings, landscaping public transport stops, creating city gardens. Also, distribution of green public transport, which could be run on biodiesel. Also, allocating the ecological direction as a separate direction at the competitions of the public budget in the city councils, supporting for the energy saving projects for apartment buildings, and developing urban permaculture.
And now moving on to the last, but not least, to the community level, we wish to see the creation of organic farming communities, also cooperation between livestock and the agricultural sector. We also advise to create joint children's green zones, also implementation of Lavata Sea community for school children in order to spread awareness about global warming and about environmental issues. Creation of convenient bike paths between villages, support for green business hubs, installation of solar water heaters and solar collectors in school and public buildings, and
Am I audible? Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for the dynamic and uplifting presentation. As we are now approaching the Q&A session, I'm once again inviting you to engage our students in the discussion. And in the meantime, let me invite Professor Andrei Kostyuk for critical comments and a comprehensive response.
Thank you, Victor. Basically, to hear this fresh approach to the problems which are very complex, which are not easy even to comprehend, and it's even more difficult to find a response which would be basically matching all the complexities which every social issue, especially such as migration, for example, or environmental problem brings with itself. So congratulations, was a great job, especially the third group, very well thought through, very nice presentation style, very vivid. Regarding general response, I can say that taking step by step for each concrete issues, because they are rather different in nature. Social entrepreneurship. What is interesting for me here is that basically entrepreneurship means working for profit, but this profit is not for the entrepreneur himself or herself. It's for promoting common good. Yeah, so it's the type of service. So the people who are engaged in this are very high motivated people, or should be very highly motivated people for the service of common good, because they sacrifice, they give part of their time, their talents, their efforts in order to promote the common good. This is why society really owes respect and assistance to these groups. The question is, which assistance? Of course, tax incentives, for example, they were mentioned most of the time, are important, but Ukraine is not a high tax jurisdiction. Basically, most of the private entrepreneurs pay just a small, whatever flat tax or whatever turnover tax, which 3-5%, which in case of a cafe is not a high burden. We can create NGOs or charitable organizations and then make subsidiaries of these NGOs the social enterprises. So there are plenty of legal forms. Of course, perhaps there should be some whatever lawyers or consultants who can advise social entrepreneurs what is the best way to structure their endeavors. But the endeavors themselves are very valuable, and for me, I think the most what these people need is that society is aware, and that basically somebody is grateful, that somebody can share their view, can share and can join them with promoting this thing. Second, regarding refugees, it's very complicated issue. First of all, because we are confronted with human beings who are in need, who sometimes are in misery, who escaped from their homes, lost everything sometimes. But on the other hand, these are people who are foreign in many respects to this culture, to this country. So their cultural integration, their social integration is really becoming part of the task which is crucial if we want these people to stay with us. European countries face the same, so I encourage you also to make yourself more acquainted with the experience of such countries as Germany, for example, where the social thought of the church is basically very well developed and presented on different levels of community, political, economic, media life. So there is a lot of experience which we can get from them. And regarding environment, once more, it was the best part of the presentation, in my opinion. And apart from the congratulations, the only thing I would like to stress is that the principle of sustainability, which is now becoming more and more popular among the social Catholic thinkers, is not just about institutions, about laws, about procedures. It's also about understanding that basically we are temporal guests on this planet, and we have to create structures, economic, social, cultural, which we would be glad to share with next generations, and which can make this world better and basically sustainable. So this is, again, this is educational, psychological, social issue, not just the issue of reforming. This is why NGOs are so crucial in this respect, what is very nicely also presented in your presentation. Thank you, and congratulations once more.
Thank you very much, Professor Kostyuk, for your insightful comments. And I'm now wondering whether we already have some questions from the audience, either online or here in this room. In that case, let me begin the conversation with my own question, which I have many, but let me start with the basic thing of how to bring this kind of themes into the front of the stage of public deliberation, because you see you're the future elites, and you're here at the Ukrainian Catholic University thinking of those problems as part of your studies, but obviously the action, the effective action with regard to many of those issues can only be initiated provided that a good deal of our population, especially here in Ukraine, as you've been addressing the issues as they are reflected in Ukraine, will join you, will also become concerned about climate, the refugees and the poorest of the poor, and the transparent rules and the good climate for the entrepreneurial activity. So how to make people be more concerned about what you are concerned?
Hey. Не чути? Well, I think that it is really difficult. The thing is that it is really difficult to bring this question to the people about how should we help refugees, because as I mentioned, we have really much of our own problems, and we have 1.5 million of internal refugees, and society, the big part of society thinks that if we have our own refugees and we can't really cope with them, why should we help those foreign people? And I think that the effective way to bring this issue to the people would be to say, like, how would you like so our Ukrainian refugees who are now running from war on the east somewhere in European countries, how would you like so they were treated there? And it is our answer. So we have to treat refugees in Ukraine the same way as we would like Ukrainian refugees to be treated in Western countries.
Thank you for your question. I think that the state is this one of these agents that can implement and create some policies that can regulate some spheres of activity. And by this creating of such policy, the society and the population of not only our country will be aware of such problems and will be aware of how to deal with such problems and what kind of instruments they have, and and they will clearly understand what needs to be done and what people can do for for the better result of the society and so on.
Yeah, also thank you for your question. We can think of actually popularizing social business in this regard. First things first is what we talked about is for the state to step in and help those social enterprises that already exist to promote themselves, to be able to grow, to have more, more restaurants, more places where people can come and actually engage. Therefore, it's the part of the state that is able to make some changes. The other thing is actually enterprises themselves. Really, it's a very complex question. And for Ukraine, it's especially complex because we have this mentality, this still thoughts that we are not ready to give more than 50% of our income for someone else. Therefore, it's those people who have this mentality, who are ready to give, they also can popularize it. We have now social media, we have lots of different platforms that allow them to tell other people that there is such chance, such possibility, and that it's basically not only about us, but also about people who are close to us and who need help. So those are two ways, the state and the entrepreneurs themselves. Thank you.
I'd also like to hear those who are not with us in the room, but who are very much with us in spirit in Zoom.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for your question. So while we were doing our research, we were actually thinking about this. And the thing with the ecological problems is that the issue is so all-encompassing, it's intertwined. It can be done by like a one-step legislature or just a one-step process. This is something that should be entangled into our lifestyle. And it's about how I do it, how I show my example. So we think that social institutions such as educational institutions or entities where we work, where we study, we should spread it out, spread awareness, and spread the general like style of how we live, just to make it intertwine it into our lifestyle and make it like a normal, a routine thing to care about my planet, my home, and my country, and to care about my environment, because this affects not only me, it's going to affect my children and all the other generations that are coming after. Passing the floor to Marta.
Yeah, thank you. Something that I wish to add is our group believes that it has to be, solving this issue has to include both sides, the government and the people, because this is something that we are facing currently, and it's something that we have been discussing during our work. If only the government does something, but people are not involved in all of these spheres, it doesn't make any sense to do anything. Same vice versa. If only people are the ones who really wish to, bring some changes into our communities, but the government does not support them in any way, it is impossible for the people to do some quality work. So we believe that this has to be, as first of all, Irina said, we have to spread awareness about what we could do about this issue and how we could implement it. And we also have to definitely encourage our government and our people to change their mindsets and really be active citizens and really take part into resolving of this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we only have time for one final question. Yeah, I think Professor Kostuk still has a lot to say.
Well, professors are creatures which always have something to say. This is their weakness. But to wrap up, for me, the important thing and the difficult thing, especially for Ukraine, is not just to raise awareness about the problems, but how to motivate people work together. So solidarity as doing together and helping each other and relying on somebody else's performance is something which is very needed in this country. So my question is in continuation to what Professor Poletko was just researching before. Do you think that solidarity, or rather lack of solidarity, is a problem for building sustainable future in Ukraine? And if so, how we shall basically encourage and motivate people, especially young generation people, to work together, to assist each other, and to rely, to trust each other?
Thank you for your question. That's a deep and kind of complicated question, actually. But my answer is quite simple. It's to set an example for the next generations, and not only to tell them that solidarity needs to be implemented in the society and there is a need of solidarity, but also to show them how that solidarity actually works.
Well, I think that solidarity is, or a lack of it, is a very deep-rooted feeling, or maybe even skill, like teamwork skill. And it is important to raise this from childhood, from student age. And we at Ethic, Politics, Economics BA program, teamwork is a crucial part of our studying. Most of our projects we do at teamwork, and I hope that it help to raise a new generation of people who are always ready to work in different groups with different people to cope with different types of personality.
Yeah, also thank you for your question. To kind of not say the same things and my colleagues say it, I would say that we have to show an example, but not just to depict how good it is to actually have solidarity among people, but to engage those who are kind of outside of this and understanding the importance of solidarity. And therefore, I totally support my colleagues who said that education is a huge part of it. But also, we have to explain people that it is much more better to stay together, especially in the tough times, than to just try to solve problems individually and not actually coming up to the exact solution and to the solution which is good for everyone in the society. And yes, we have this lack of solidarity. And as I said, we have to solve it together, not individually.
Okay, just to add something up to this discussion, just the last one. I think the mindset should be like not me and you, not me against you on some issue, but me and you against the problem. And I think solidarity really helps with that. And I love how the Catholic Church teaching intertwines with our goals. And we have the examples of the Laudato Si circles in Ukraine and in the world, and it's spreading this feeling and teaching us solidarity and taking responsibility for each other and for what we are doing, actually. Yeah, thank you.
Marta, you'd like to take a word. This is the moment to do so.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what my colleague Yarina has just said. The example of Laudato Si circles really shows us that we could, as actually Dmitro was saying, one of the colleagues who is present at the university, it shows that we could really raise, children from the young age, and we can teach them about solidarity and about all of these aspects of the Catholic studies. So, yeah, I definitely agree with my colleagues.
Thank you very much, our dear students and presenters. Thank you, Professor Kostuk, for your reflections and your comments. Thank you, our audience, for being with us from all over the world and from here. Those are the real issues. Those are the difficult issues, and I'm really grateful to you for taking courage to reflect on them thoroughly, critically, and responsibly. And I encourage you not to give up. I encourage you to cultivate the reflection further on. But for now, my congratulations, and I invite everyone to join me in my gratitude to our speakers.